The night shift always felt longer when the building was quiet, and Marcus Reed pushed his mop slowly across the marble lobby, watching the reflection of the ceiling lights ripple in the water. At 42, he had learned to move carefully, like every sound might remind him of what he used to be and what he had become. Once, he had worn pressed shirts and carried blueprints under his arm. Now, he wore a faded uniform with his name stitched in crooked letters. Cleaning offices long after everyone else had gone home, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He already knew who it was before he checked. His daughter, Lily. He dried his hands and answered. "Hey, sweetheart?" Her voice was tight. "Dad, Mom says you forgot to send the money for the school trip again." Marcus closed his eyes. "I didn't forget. I get paid tomorrow morning. I promise I'll bring it before school." There was a pause, then a quiet sigh that felt heavier than any shout. "Okay," she said, and hung up. He stared at the phone for a moment, then slipped it back into his pocket and went back to mopping. His shoulders slumped. Losing his job as a construction project manager after the company collapsed had started a chain reaction he'd never been able to stop. His marriage had cracked under financial pressure, and when his wife left, she took not just her clothes but the belief that Marcus could ever be more than what he was now. Even his own parents spoke to him like he was a disappointment they didn't quite know how to handle. Only Lily still believed in him, but even that faith was wearing thin. That night, after clocking out, Marcus took the bus across town instead of heading straight home. He got off near a small diner that stayed open late, a place where he could sit with a cup of cheap coffee and let the day fade away before returning to a tiny apartment that echoed with silence when Lily wasn't there. He slid into a booth by the window and rapped, his hands around the mug. The waitress sat down. Outside, rain streaked the glass, turning streetlights into blurred halos. That's when he noticed the woman at the counter. She didn't look like she belonged there, not with the quiet confidence in the way she sat, nor with the calm expression that suggested she was used to being listened to. She wore a simple coat, but something about her posture, the way people unconsciously made space around her, made Marcus think she was important, though he couldn't say why. A few minutes later, the power flickered, and the lights dimmed before coming back on. The waitress muttered something about the old wiring, and the cook shouted from the back that the grill had cut out. The woman at the counter stood up. "Is everything okay?" "We're trying to get it back on," the waitress said, forcing a smile. "Might take a few minutes." Marcus watched the cook struggle with the breaker panel near the kitchen door. Without thinking, he stood up and walked over. Years of dealing with job site problems had left him with instincts he couldn't shake. "Mind if I take a look?" he asked. The cook shrugged. "Be my guest." Marcus opened the panel, scanned the switches, and noticed one was halfway down. He flipped it firmly, then checked the wiring. "Your circuit's overloaded. That freezer and grill are pulling too much on the same line. You need to separate them, or this'll keep happening." The lights stayed on. The grill hummed back to life. The cook stared at him. "You an electrician or something?" Marcus shook his head, "Just used to fixing things." From behind him, the woman's voice came softly. "Thank you? That was kind of you." He turned, a little embarrassed. "It was nothing." She smiled, and for a moment, something warm settled in his chest, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Sometimes nothing is exactly what people need. They exchanged a few polite words, and Marcus went back to his booth, not thinking much of it. He finished his coffee, paid, and headed home, unaware that the brief moment would change everything. 2 days later, during his shift, his supervisor called him into the maintenance office. "Reed, you've got a visitor." Marcus frowned. No one ever came to see him at work. When he stepped into the hallway, he froze. It was the woman from the diner, now dressed in a tailored suit, standing with a man who looked like a lawyer. Suddenly, she looked even more out of place in his janitor's world. "Hi," she said gently. "I hope this isn't inappropriate. I asked around and found out you worked here." Marcus swallowed. "Is something wrong?" "No," she said quickly. "My name is Evelyn Carter. I wanted to thank you properly for helping at the diner, and I wanted to talk to you." The name hit him like a quiet thunderclap. Evelyn Carter. Even he had heard of her. The billionaire CEO whose companies were reshaping entire cities. I think there's been a mistake, he said. I'm just a janitor. She met his eyes. You're a man who knew how to fix a problem when no one else could. That matters to me. They went to a small conference room, and Marcus sat across from her, hands folded tightly in his lap. I run a large property development firm, she said. We're renovating several old buildings in this area. What you said about the wiring at the diner, it showed experience. I looked into your background. You were a project manager, weren't you? His face burned. A long time ago. Would you consider consulting on a small project for me? She asked. Just part-time to start. I'd like someone who understands both planning and practical issues. Marcus shook his head slowly. You don't understand. I'm not. I don't have connections anymore. I can't just step into that world. Evelyn leaned forward. I understand more than you think. I started with nothing, too. But I know talent when I see it. I'm not offering you charity. I'm offering you work. He hesitated, fear and hope fighting inside him. Why me? She smiled slightly. Because you didn't. Hesitate to help when no one was watching. Against every instinct telling him to stay where he was, Marcus said yes. The first few weeks were exhausting. He worked his janitor shifts at night and spent his days visiting renovation sites with Evelyn's team, reviewing plans, pointing out structural issues others overlooked. At first, some of the engineers looked at him skeptically, but when his suggestions saved time and money, attitudes shifted. Still, when Marcus went home, nothing had changed with his family. When Lily told her grandparents about his janitor job, they shook their heads. He had so much potential, his father said, not knowing Marcus could hear through the thin walls. And now look at him. Even Lily started to feel embarrassed when her friends asked what her dad did. One evening, Lily refused to go with him to the grocery store. People stare at your uniform, she said quietly. Marcus felt something inside him crack, but he forced a smile. It's okay. I'll go alone. That night, he sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor, wondering if accepting Evelyn's offer had been a foolish dream. Maybe this was as far as he was meant to go. The next day, Evelyn invited him to lunch after a site visit. They sat in a quiet park, eating sandwiches from a nearby cafe. You look tired, she said. He let out a small laugh. That obvious. She studied him for a moment. Is something wrong at home? He hadn't planned to say anything, but the words came out anyway. My family doesn't think much of me anymore. I can't blame them. I haven't given them many reasons to. Evelyn shook her head. Success doesn't always look like money and titles. Sometimes it looks like showing up every day even when it hurts. Marcus looked at her. You don't know what it's like to feel invisible. Her eyes softened. You'd be surprised. A week later, everything changed. A major structural flaw was discovered in one of Evelyn's renovation projects, just days before a critical inspection. If they failed, the company would lose millions and face legal trouble. Engineers argued over solutions, tempers flared, and time ran out. Marcus studied the blueprints quietly, then spoke up. There's a workaround. We can reinforce the support beams from the inside without tearing down the outer wall. It's risky, but it can pass inspection if done right. The room went silent. Evelyn looked at him. Are you sure? He nodded. I've seen it done before. She made a decision on the spot. Do it. For 48 hours straight, Marcus worked alongside the crew, guiding them, lifting beams, crawling into tight spaces, refusing to rest until the job was done. When the inspector came, the building passed. News of the near disaster and the last minute save spread quickly through the company. People started asking, who's that guy who fixed the project? Evelyn called Marcus into her office the next morning. I'm promoting you to project supervisor, she said. Full-time, with benefits, and a salary that reflects your skills. Marcus stared at her, speechless. You earned this, she added. That evening, Marcus picked up Lily from school wearing clean clothes instead of his uniform. Dad, did you change jobs? She asked. He smiled. Yeah, I did. For the first time in months, she hugged him tightly in front of everyone. When Marcus told his parents, his father cleared his throat awkwardly. I always knew you'd figure things out." Marcus didn't argue. He just nodded, but inside, something shifted. He realized he didn't need their approval anymore to know his worth. Over the next few months, Marcus's life transformed in ways he never imagined. He moved to a better apartment, had dinner with Lily every night, and slowly rebuilt the confidence he thought he'd lost forever. Evelyn and Marcus worked closely, spending long hours solving problems together. Their conversations drifted from blueprints to books to childhood memories. One evening, after finishing a late meeting, Evelyn said, "Do you want to grab dinner? Not as co-workers, just as people." Marcus hesitated, then smiled. "I'd like that." At the restaurant, away from boardrooms and construction sites, Evelyn seemed different, more relaxed, more human. She told him about growing up poor, about building her empire piece by piece, about how lonely success could be. "Everyone sees the money," she said softly. "They don't see the nights I wondered if it was worth it." Marcus understood that feeling more than she knew. Their relationship grew quietly, carefully, neither rushing, both aware of the worlds between them. But word spread. Some board members didn't like the idea of their CEO spending time with a former janitor. Whispers started. Questions about Marcus's qualifications, about favoritism. Evelyn called an emergency meeting. "I won't apologize for recognizing talent," she said firmly, "and I won't allow personal bias to undermine someone who saved this company millions." Silence followed. Then one board member nodded slowly. "Results are results." After that, no one dared challenge her again. The real test, however, came from Marcus's past. His ex-wife showed up one afternoon, standing awkwardly in the doorway of his apartment. "Lily says you got a big job," she said. He nodded cautiously. I didn't think you'd ever bounce back," she admitted. "Maybe I was wrong." Marcus looked at her calmly. "I didn't bounce back because you left. I did it because I had to for our daughter." She swallowed, realizing there was no going back to what they once were. One night, as Marcus walked Lily to bed, she asked, "Dad, are you happy now?" He thought for a moment. "I think I'm getting there." Weeks later, Evelyn invited Marcus and Lily to a charity event hosted by her foundation. Lily had never seen anything like its sparkling lights, elegant dresses, people speaking in hushed, respectful tones. When Evelyn took the stage and spoke about supporting families and education, Lily whispered, "She's amazing." Marcus smiled. "Yeah, she really is." After the event, Evelyn knelt down to Lily's level. "Your dad is one of the strongest people I know," she said gently. Lily beamed. "I know." That moment, more than any promotion or paycheck, told Marcus that his life had truly changed. Months passed, and one quiet evening, Marcus and Evelyn stood on a balcony overlooking the city. "Do you ever think about that diner?" Marcus asked. Evelyn smiled. "All the time. Funny how small moments can change everything." He looked at her, heart steady, unafraid for once. "I don't know where I'd be if you hadn't walked into my life." She shook her head. "I walked into a diner. You chose to stand up and help. That was all you." He reached for her hand, and she didn't pull away. Below them, the city lights glowed, each one a story, a struggle, a hope. Marcus thought about the man he had been, pushing a mop across a silent floor, believing he was invisible. He wasn't invisible anymore. He was a father his daughter was proud of, a man who had earned his place, and someone who had found, in the most unexpected way, that respect, love, and second chances sometimes arrive disguised as ordinary nights in quiet diners, waiting for someone brave enough to stand up and say, "Let me help."